For privacy reasons, names and places have been changed. This story is inspired by true events.
On a scorching afternoon in 2004, 5-year-old twin sisters Zuri and her sister were at a routine scenic pull-off with their family in Joshua Tree National Park, California. A sudden, violent dust squall engulfed their minivan. When the air cleared, the sliding door was ajar, and the twins were gone. Despite an extensive investigation, Zuri Mensah and her twin sister vanished without a trace into the unforgiving desert. For 17 agonizing years, their family endured profound uncertainty, the silent landscape holding its secrets tight. Then, in 2021, a discovery was made. A sun-bleached booster seat, found half-buried in a remote Pinto Basin wash. This is the complete investigation into what truly happened to Zuri Mensah and her twin sister. Before we continue, let us know where you're watching from, and if you enjoy this content, consider liking and subscribing to our channel. Now let's continue. Joshua Tree National Park, a vast expanse of arid beauty in Southern California, is a landscape of stark contrasts. Ancient geological formations rise from the desert floor, sculpted by millennia of wind and water, while the park's namesake trees stand as stoic sentinels against a relentless sun. Its beauty is undeniable, yet beneath the picturesque surface lies an unforgiving wilderness, capable of consuming without a trace. It was into this deceptive tranquility that the Mensah family ventured in the spring of 2004. Their minivan, packed for a day trip, traversed the winding roads that cut through the Pinto Basin, a routine scenic drive for countless visitors. The air was clear, the sky an unbroken azure, and the atmosphere inside the vehicle was one of relaxed enjoyment. 5-year-old twins, Zuri and her sister, chattered from their booster seats, their innocent excitement a counterpoint to the desert's profound silence. The family paused at a designated scenic pull-off, a common practice to admire the panoramic vistas of the surrounding rock formations and distant mountain ranges. For a brief moment, the minivan's side door was left ajar, an oversight born of casual comfort, as the adults stretched and took in the view. It was a fleeting detail, seemingly insignificant in the grand scheme of a peaceful afternoon. Then, without warning, the desert asserted its power. A sudden, violent dust squall erupted, seemingly from nowhere. The sky, minutes earlier a brilliant blue, transformed into a swirling maelstrom of ochre and sand. Visibility plummeted to mere feet, the wind howled with an almost predatory force, and the once serene landscape became a chaotic, disorienting blur. The family scrambled back into the minivan, fighting against the sudden onslaught, the world outside a tempest of grit and noise. As abruptly as it began, the squall dissipated, leaving behind an eerie calm and a thick layer of fine dust coating everything. The Mensahs, shaken but otherwise unharmed, took a moment to compose themselves. It was then, in the returning quiet, that the horrifying reality began to unfold. The minivan door, which had been briefly ajar before the storm, remained open. A cold dread settled over them as they scanned the back seats. The booster seats were empty. Zuri and her twin sister, who had been there moments before, were gone. Panic surged, raw and immediate. The names of the children were screamed into the suddenly vast and silent desert. The frantic calls for help, desperate and choked with terror, pierced the stillness, signaling the commencement of a desperate and seemingly impossible search. The desperate calls for help from the Mensah family reverberated through the vastness of Joshua Tree National Park, triggering an immediate and substantial response. Park Ranger Kyle Ito, a veteran of the desert landscape, was among the first responders to arrive at the scene. His experience had taught him that the initial hours of any disappearance in such an environment were critical, but the circumstances of the twins' vanishing were uniquely perplexing. Search and rescue teams, comprising both park personnel and volunteers, rapidly converged on the Pinto Basin pull-off. Their immediate objective was to establish a perimeter and begin a systematic grid search of the area, where the children were last seen. Ground teams, equipped with GPS and communication devices, fanned out across the rugged terrain, meticulously scanning every crevice, every stand of Ocotillo, and every dry wash. Overhead, helicopters and fixed-wing G aircraft conducted aerial surveys, their powerful optics attempting to detect any anomaly in the landscape that might indicate the presence of the 5-year-olds. The search extended for miles in every direction, encompassing the immediate vicinity of the minivan and stretching into the more remote sections of the Pinto Basin Wash. However, the desert itself proved to be an formidable adversary. The relentless heat, even in spring, quickly became a factor, exacerbating fatigue and necessitating frequent hydration breaks. The stark, disorienting landscape, with its endless array of similar-looking rock formations and winding washes, offered no clear landmarks, making it easy for even experienced searchers to lose their bearings. Furthermore, the very dust squall that had preceded the disappearance could have easily obscured or obliterated any immediate tracks or signs the twins might have left. Days bled into weeks, yet the exhaustive efforts yielded no tangible results. There were no footprints, no discarded items of clothing, no signs of struggle, and no credible eyewitness accounts. It was as if Zuri and her sister had simply vanished into the desert air. The absence of any clue, however minor, was profoundly frustrating for Ranger Ito and his teams. Each passing hour diminished the already slim hopes of finding the children alive. Eventually, with all immediate leads exhausted and the vast expanse thoroughly scoured, the active search operations began to scale back. The initial surge of resources and manpower dwindled, and while the case remained open, it slowly but inevitably drifted into the agonizing category of cold cases, a haunting mystery in the heart of the unforgiving desert. The active search for Zuri Mensah and her twin sister eventually ceased, but for the Mensah family, the search for answers never truly ended. Days blurred into weeks, weeks into months, and then months into an agonizing succession of years. The initial wave of public sympathy and media attention slowly receded, replaced by the relentless, grinding silence of an unsolved mystery. The case files, once thick with daily reports and witness statements, grew heavy with the weight of inactivity. They were eventually cataloged, assigned the grim designation of cold, and consigned to the dim recesses of the Unsolved Crimes Archive. From 2004 to 2021, nearly 2 decades passed without a single credible lead. For Ranger Kyle Ito, the disappearance of the twins remained a haunting professional and personal failure. The image of the distraught Mensah parents, their faces etched with a grief he could do nothing to alleviate, was a memory that refused to fade. He, like many others involved in the initial search, reviewed the case periodically, hoping some forgotten detail or new perspective might emerge, but the answers remained elusive. The official status of the case as a baffling cold case was a stark reminder of the desert's capacity to swallow its secrets whole. It joined a growing list of disappearances in remote wilderness areas, cases where individuals seemingly vanished without a trace, defying conventional investigative methods. Initial theories, ranging from accidental wandering and exposure to abduction, had been meticulously explored. Every inch of the surrounding terrain had been scrutinized for signs of struggle, footprints, or discarded items that might suggest foul play. The possibility of the children being swept away by a flash flood, a common desert hazard, was considered, but the timing of the dust squall did not align with significant rainfall. Each hypothesis, however plausible on its surface, ultimately crumbled under the weight of insufficient evidence. There was simply nothing to substantiate any of them. The long silence that followed was broken only by the Mensah family's enduring grief, a private agony sustained by the absence of closure. They lived in a perpetual state of limbo, their lives irrevocably altered by that fateful day in Joshua Tree, forever bound by the unanswered question of what became of their 5-year-old twins. The desert held its counsel, yielding no confession, no sign, just an impenetrable, suffocating quiet. 17 years had passed since the Mensa twins vanished into the swirling dust of Joshua Tree. The calendar had turned to 2021, and for most, the names Zuri and her sister were relegated to the annals of cold cases, a tragic footnote in the park's history. Yet, the desert, in its own slow, relentless way, was about to yield a fragment of its long-held secret. Deep within the desolate expanse of the Pinto Basin Wash, a landscape carved by infrequent but powerful flash floods, a seemingly mundane discovery was made. The wash, a serpentine channel of sand, gravel, and scattered debris, had been scoured countless times during the initial search. But the desert's ceaseless shifts and flows continually rearranged its contents. There, half buried in a fan of gravel deposited by a long-forgotten rain event, lay a sun-bleached booster seat. Its plastic shell, once brightly colored, was now a faded, ghostly white, scoured smooth by years of wind-blown sand and exposure to the relentless sun. It was a relic, a silent testament to the passage of time, yet its form was unmistakably that of a child's car seat. The discovery, made by a park maintenance crew conducting routine flood damage assessment, initially seemed innocuous, another piece of discarded refuse in a vast wilderness. However, the location was remote, far from any established road or common hiking trail, raising immediate questions about its provenance. When the item was reported and subsequently retrieved, investigators from the Cold Case Unit were notified. A meticulous examination began. Despite its weathered state, a faint, etched serial number was eventually discerned on the underside of the plastic. Cross-referencing this number with the original police reports from 2004 provided the confirmation that sent shockwaves through the unit. It was identified as one of the booster seats from the Mensa family's minivan. The ghost from the past had materialized. For Ranger Kyle Ito, who had been on the ground during those frantic first days, the news was profoundly unsettling. After nearly 2 decades of silence, a tangible piece of evidence had finally emerged. The discovery instantly reignited the dormant case, pulling it from the dusty shelves of forgot files back into the harsh light of active investigation. This single, weathered object offered a glimmer of hope, a concrete link to the day the twins disappeared. Yet, it also raised a fresh barrage of agonizing questions. How had it traveled so far from the pull-off? What forces had carried it to this remote spot? And if the booster seat was here, what had become of Zuri and her sister? The desert had finally spoken, but its message was cryptic, demanding a new, urgent quest for interpretation. The discovery of the booster seat transformed the Mensa twins' cold case from a dormant file into an active, urgent investigation. The weathered plastic, once a symbol of vanished hope, now represented the first tangible lead in 17 years. Forensic specialists meticulously examined every inch of the sun-bleached seat. They scoured its crevices for microscopic fibers, traces of organic matter, or any unique sediment that might offer clues to its journey. Its surface bore the marks of years of exposure: sand abrasion, UV degradation, and a thin, dark film known as desert varnish, a natural coating that forms slowly on exposed rock and other surfaces in arid environments. This varnish, often overlooked, held potential secrets. Recognizing the unique challenges of the desert environment, investigators broadened their approach, bringing in specialized expertise. Dr. Alma Requijo, a botanist with a particular focus on desert flora and ecosystem dynamics, was enlisted. Her knowledge of plant life cycles and the subtle indicators of environmental change in arid zones was considered invaluable. Alongside her, Wilcoyote Benelli, a local tracker renowned for his profound understanding of the desert's nuances and indigenous tracking methods, joined the team. Benelli's ability to read the landscape, interpret subtle shifts in terrain, and anticipate the behavior of water in dry washes offered a perspective no conventional investigator could replicate. With these new experts on board, the investigative focus shifted. The entire Pinto Basin Wash, particularly the area surrounding the booster seat's discovery, was re-evaluated. Modern ground-penetrating radar and drone imagery, technologies unavailable in 2004, were deployed to map the subterranean structures and hydrological pathways of the wash. Every gravel fan, every bend in the channel was scrutinized with a renewed intensity. The central questions guiding this painstaking new investigation were stark and persistent. How had the Booster C traveled so far from the scenic pull-off where the twins disappeared? What natural forces, previously unaccounted for, could have transported it to this remote location? And if the seed had been carried by these forces, where then were Zuri and her sister? The collaboration between law enforcement, cutting-edge science, and deep traditional knowledge aimed to unravel the desert's 17-year-old secret. The Booster seat, once a simple object of tragic loss, became a forensic Rosetta Stone under the meticulous scrutiny of Dr. Alma Requijo. Her expertise lay not just in botany, but in the intricate dance between flora and geology in arid environments. She focused intently on the thin, dark layer of desert varnish that coated sections of the Booster seat's plastic. Desert varnish, a natural accretion of clays, iron, and manganese, forms incredibly slowly over time, often trapping microscopic particles from its environment. It was within this ancient, geological film that Dr. Requijo made her groundbreaking discovery. Embedded deep within the varnish, preserved for 17 years, was a distinct type of pollen, that of the Ocotillo plant. The significance of Ocotillo pollen was immediate and profound. Ocotillos, iconic to the Sonoran and Mojave deserts, are drought-deciduous plants that typically bloom only after significant rainfall, often in a brief but vibrant display. Dr. Requijo, drawing upon extensive historical botanical records and meteorological data for Joshua Tree National Park, was able to correlate the specific Ocotillo bloom pollen found on the Booster seat with precise bloom dates from past years. This pinpointed a narrow window of time, post-2004, when the Booster seat must have been exposed to a particular Ocotillo bloom event. This was the first concrete temporal clue since the twins vanished. Simultaneously, Will Coyote Benelli, with his unparalleled understanding of the desert's hydrology and topography, was analyzing the broader landscape of the Pinto Basin Wash. His tracking skills extended beyond footprints. He could read the subtle scars left by flash floods, decipher the flow patterns of ephemeral water, and anticipate where debris might accumulate or be carried. Benelli's deep traditional knowledge, passed down through generations, allowed him to see the desert not as a static backdrop, but as a dynamic, living entity governed by ancient, predictable forces. He understood how even a seemingly minor rain event could transform dry washes into raging torrents, capable of moving objects far heavier than a Booster seat. The critical moment arrived when Dr. Requijo's precise bloom dates were overlaid with Benelli's detailed understanding of storm runoff maps and the hydrological patterns of the Joshua Tree area for those specific periods. The convergence of scientific dating and traditional desert knowledge illuminated a previously unseen pathway. Their combined analysis revealed the existence of a siphon chute, an unexpected, hidden channel carved into the bedrock, often concealed by debris and sand. This chute, activated only during specific, powerful storm events, acted as a natural funnel, siphoning water and anything carried within it from the main wash. The siphon chute, they deduced, fed directly into a concealed slot canyon, a deep, narrow fissure in the earth, invisible from the surface and virtually inaccessible. This was the mechanism by which the Booster seat had been transported, and it pointed to the most probable yet horrifying location of the Mensa twins. The desert had finally revealed a path, a secret held for 17 years, leading into its hidden depths. The revelation of the siphon chute and the concealed slot canyon marked a profound turning point in the Mensa twins' disappearance. After 17 years of an impenetrable silence, the desert had at last relinquished a critical piece of its secret. This was not merely another lead. It was a complete redefinition of the entire investigation, moving the case from the realm of baffling cold files to an actionable, albeit perilous, search. The static image of a vanishing act in a dust storm was replaced by a dynamic understanding of powerful hydrological forces at play. The new search parameters were precise, focused on the previously uncharted depths of the concealed slot canyon. Accessing this hidden fissure proved to be an immense challenge. The entrance, a narrow vertical slit in the bedrock, was barely visible and required specialized mountaineering and confined space rescue techniques. Engineering teams were brought in to stabilize loose rock and ensure the safety of the searchers, who would brave the tight, dark passages. Each descent into the canyon was a dangerous undertaking, demanding meticulous planning and unwavering courage from the search and rescue personnel now tasked with exploring its unknown reaches. The air within was still, heavy with the dust of ages, and the light, when it pierced the opening, cast eerie, shifting shadows on the ancient rock walls. For the Mensa family, this breakthrough brought an overwhelming surge of conflicting emotions. The news, delivered by Ranger Kyle Ito, reignited a hope they had long buried, a fragile ember fanned back to life after nearly 2 decades. Yet this hope was inextricably intertwined with a profound apprehension, a chilling awareness that the truth, when finally uncovered, might bring not relief, but a definitive, agonizing closure. Their long-held limbo was ending, but the outcome remained uncertain, suspended between the promise of answers and the fear of what those answers might reveal. For Ito and his colleagues, the discovery was a vindication of their unwavering persistence. It underscored the invaluable power of specialized expertise. Dr. Alma Requijo's botanical forensics and Will Coyote, Benelli's ancestral desert knowledge, in solving the most challenging cold cases. The synergy between modern science and traditional wisdom had, against all odds, peeled back the layers of a 17-year-old mystery. The desert, once a silent accomplice to the twins' disappearance, had been compelled to speak through its subtle environmental clues and ancient geological formations. While the ultimate fate of Zuri and her sister remained to be fully uncovered, the path to that truth had finally been revealed, leading into the hidden heart of Joshua Tree. The impenetrable mystery had yielded its deepest secret, setting in motion the final, arduous quest for answers.